So I'm going to talk to you for a little bit about who Vermont Emergency Management is and what we do, and then I'll be turning it over to my colleagues over at Recovery and Mitigation to go into a deeper dive on some items. So again, I'm Emily Harris. I'm the Engagement Section Chief at Vermont Emergency Management. My section's responsible for that local engagement with the emergency management directors as well as regional organizations, and we do that through our regional coordinators. If you don't know who your regional coordinator is, it's on the screen here, and I believe I've got a map a little bit later. My section is also responsible for state and local training as well as school safety. We also have a planning and preparedness section that's responsible for the state emergency management plan, as well as a lot of other things. So if you're a state agency looking for exercising or planning assistance, you can contact our planning and preparedness section, which currently the interim chief of that is Liz Rao. We have a recovery and mitigation section as well, and I'm actually going to let them go into a deep dive on that in a little bit, so I'm going to skip over very briefly on that. And then we also have an operations and logistics section. That section oversees our VT alert program, our watch officer program, our web EOC program as well. And then we have our Homeland Security section, which also you may know has some funding currently available, just like hazard mitigation. And that information is all available on our website, as well as how to contact all of these individuals. But the main reason we exist is we want to ensure that people and communities in Vermont have the capabilities to prevent, protect, mitigate, respond to, and recover from all hazards, whether they be natural or man-made, to enhance safety, quality of life, and the economic vitality of the state and its citizens. So Andrew mentioned this, talking about the local emergency management plan. Again, we do this annually. We want to make sure we've got those contacts up to date. They do need to be submitted every year after town meeting day and before May 1st. If you submit it before town meeting day, it doesn't count for the current year. So please hold off until town meeting day to actually adopt and submit that plan. Something that is new this year is that towns can continue to submit through their regional planning commission by sending them an email, or they can submit it to the Regional Planning Commission by filling it out in a web EOC. So this is something that you guys are getting an early preview on. It's going to be advertised wider in our newsletter that comes out at the beginning of February. But if you're interested in using web EOC at the local level, both during a disaster and also to submit your local emergency management plan, you can reach out to your regional coordinator, which I'll show you a map on the next page, and they'll pre-populate your local emergency management plan in web EOC. So all you'll have to do is update anything that has changed and go ahead and submit that after it's adopted in your town after town meeting day. There's a couple of nice things about going through web EOC. One, you can see where it is in process. Is it being reviewed by the Regional Planning Commission? Is it in the final approval with Vermont Emergency Management, or has it been okayed and it's now good to go? It also allows you to have one place that everyone in town that has a web EOC account can access it. So it's not that one person was storing it on their personal computer and that person's left town and now you have to retype it. It allows you to have multiple people with access into web EOC that can update that. It also allows you to make updates to your contact information throughout the year, so you don't have to contact the Regional Planning Commission and VM to make sure we both get the update. If you update it in web EOC in your LEMP, everyone gets a copy of it. We all have up-to-date contact information. And it also tells you if you are missing a required piece of information. On the screen, you'll notice there's a red asterisk for some information. Those are the pieces that are required, that it will not allow you to submit your LEMP if you do not have something in that box. It also has little bubble boxes in there to give you an example or additional information about what this is supposed to be. So on your screen right now, you'll see the section on Emergency Operations Centers, and you'll notice that we call out differently what are the positions and their corresponding duties than the EOC staff. And so in that positions and duties, it is supposed to be what are the positions that are going to exist in your Emergency Operations Center and what things are they responsible for. And then the potential staff are who are the people that could fill those roles and how would you reach them. So again, it's a possibility. You're not required to do it through WebEOC. It's open to you if you would like, and you can reach out to your regional coordinator if you would like additional information. And there's also information coming out in our newsletter next week. So who are your regional coordinators and what do they do? So Vermont Emergency Management's regional coordinators, we have 3 of them. They serve different regions of the state to provide assistance with developing emergency plans and reviewing existing plans. So if you, say, wanted to add on an animal planning annex, you can do that. And they can help you walk through that process and look at your plans and help you update them. They provide trainings to you, so you can talk to them and say, we just need a training on what is an emergency operations center. We don't know. They will come in and deliver a tailored presentation, to you and your organization, your emergency management team. They can also deliver trainings such as the Incident Command System trainings. We've got a bunch of those. They deliver our Homeland Security Exercise and Evaluation Program course. They can deliver exercises. They can have after-action meetings with you for real-world events. So many of us were impacted by some flooding that was occurring, not flooding, sorry, talking about spring flood seminar, the storm that occurred over the December month. And so these regional coordinators are available and are going into some communities to just talk about what happened. So what did your response look like? What are the things that didn't work well? And let's facilitate a discussion on how we're going to improve that in the future so that future responses don't have the same problems. And they can also provide general consultation services. So if you don't even know where to start, the old EMD left, you're brand new and you don't know anything, they'll meet with you one-on-one to talk through what is the process, what do you want to plan out for the future, what's coming up in the next few years, do you want to have assistance updating certain plans, do you want to walk through those plans, do you want to have an exercise? One of the things I also wanted to take the opportunity to note here is that we do have a couple of trainings that are coming up that you might be interested in. One is we have a local emergency management director's course happening virtually February 21st and 22nd, 2:30 to 6:30 each day. And then we also have a really exciting climate adaptation planning for emergency management class coming up February 28th through March 1st, 1 to 5 p.m. each day. Those trainings are available in our learning management system. If you have never accessed our learning management system before, you can reach out to your regional coordinator and they can talk you through it. They would love to chat with you about how you can increase the trainings that you have available to you. So these are who you contact if, it's a Monday and you just want to talk about planning and training and exercise and planning things out. But who do you contact when a disaster is actually happening and you need assistance? You reach out to our watch officer. So this has been noted a couple of times during the presentation. You can reach our watch officer 24/7 at 1-800-347-0488. So our watch officer is there regardless of the emergency if your local and regional capability has been outstretched. So you internally just don't have the resources that you need. You've reached out to the private sector in your area. You can't get the resources you need. You've reached out to your surrounding communities to seek assistance. They can't help you. Then you can contact our watch officer. Our watch officer will help connect you to resources that you need during your response. Some of these resources do come at a cost, and the watch officer will talk to you about what that cost might be as you guys are discussing it. Some of the resources specific to spring flooding that they can help you with is that connection with swift water and flood response teams, as well as connecting you with the Agency of Natural Resources spill team. So as Chief McLaughlin said during his hazmat incident, you can call that hazmat number when you we need to know how to respond to this particular spill that has happened. If you need help cleaning it up, that's the Agency of Natural Resources spill team that you can access through the watch officer. We also have sandbag caches. So these are just the bags themselves. We don't have the sand. We don't have the people to fill them. But if you think you're going to be getting some flooding, you can call our watch officer who can connect you with where you can get those sandbags. And again, you'll need to come up with where you're going to get the sand and the people to fill them. You can assist, we can assist with messaging to the public, so issuing Vermont Alert messages, doing social media pushes, and issuing press releases. So again, if your town has outstripped their ability to respond to a disaster, you can contact our watch officer to request assistance. So Vermont Alert, I mentioned that a little bit. Vermont Alert is our statewide all hazards notification system. It's currently being used by 65 municipalities. What that means is we've got 65 municipalities who have the ability to issue their own Vermont Alert messages for the people within their community. You don't have to issue one message that hits everyone. You can take a subset of your town and geo-fence an area and say, push the message out to these people. And that pushes a message out to the people, one of the 47,000 people in the state of Vermont who have requested that they receive messages. Those people have signed up for Vermont Alert and have said, here are the messages that I want to receive and the areas that I want to receive them for, and they receive them on whatever devices and by whatever means they've registered for. Also, there are 37,000 people that are part of private notification groups. Those private notification groups are maintained locally. So let's say you've got an emergency management team of 10, and when you activate your emergency operations center, you don't want to call each one of those people. You just want to push one message and have it hit everyone. You can maintain a local EOC group that you can push a message just to that group. That local maintenance means that you are responsible for going in and making sure it's got correct contact information, that as people change, you're subbing them in and out, but it allows you to send one message to this group of people. It also allows you to maintain a group for, say, your municipal water, sewer, power, so that you can push out a message to say, we have a water main break and you're on a boil water notice. Again, if you're maintaining that that list of people who register, that list of people who are on your municipal sewer, you can push out that message to that private group. Alternatively, you can help encourage people in town to sign up for Vermont Alert, and you can geo-fence an area that you just want to push that message out to the people who have registered. You can also create a private group of vulnerable populations. So, for example, let's say you have a trailer park that's in an area that floods very frequently, and you've got like 6 homes there. You can work with that trailer park to get those 6 homes either enrolled in VT Alert, so you can just geofence, or as private group where you can just push one message to those 6 homes. And additionally, this is not something you can do, but that you can request from Vermont Emergency Management through our watch officer. In the event of an immediate life safety issue, we can do reverse 911 for residential and businesses. And we currently have 114,000 residential lines and 297,000 business lines. So the reason why this is only in the event of a true life safety emergency and only comes from Vermont Emergency Management is that this says we don't care if you registered for Vermont Alert, we're going to tell you anyway because it is that critical that you know this information. So again, if there's an immediate life safety issue, you can contact the watch officer and talk through issuing that message. But at the end of the day, the best thing to do is to help encourage your residents to sign up for Vermont Alert, and for you as a municipality to get trained to issue Vermont Alert messages so you can communicate during an emergency directly with your citizens. If you have any questions or if you would like materials to provide to your residents, we have brochures, we have banners that you can hang up on, say, your fire station for a period of time. You can reach our VT Alert administrator at dps.vtalert@vermont.gov. Your regional coordinators would also be happy to talk to you about how to promote VT Alert registration and provide you with those brochures as well as that. So that's how you can communicate with your residents when you've got an emergency. But would you like to be better connected with Vermont Emergency Management? Well, if so, you can sign up for one of our email lists. So I suspect many of you today did sign up for our VEM training list because that is one of the methods that we promoted today's session at. If you know anyone else who would like to receive notification about trainings that we have available, you can encourage them to sign up for that list. All of these lists are available to anyone who would like to subscribe. You can also sign up to receive our monthly VEM newsletter that tends to come out the first week of the month, and you'll receive a link directing you to where you can go to see that. if you want to receive funding opportunities. So this is a new list, which is very exciting. So if your town administrator just wants to know every time there's funding available from Vermont Emergency Management or one of our partner organizations that notifies us, you can sign up to receive our funding messages. So that's a great list. Also, you can receive our daily watch officer report by signing up for that list. So that tells you the incidents that our watch officer handled in the overnight hours, and it comes out every day. And then school safety. So if you want to receive periodic updates from the School Safety Center, you can sign up for that list. All of these lists can be accessed on our website at vem.vermont.gov/email-lists. And my final slide before I turn it over to Ben Rose in our recovery program is about some resources available to emergency management directors. So on our website, we have a subset of pages that are dedicated just to emergency management directors. This website contains things like templates for, say, animal planning. It also has model annexes that you can add on to your local emergency management plan. It also gives you information about partner organizations that you might want to work with as a new or an older emergency management director, someone who's been around a lot. You might learn about a new partner that you didn't know existed before, so go check out our partners section. There's also a link in there to your regional emergency management committee. So I mentioned it a little bit earlier. It's a pretty new thing in statute. Regional emergency management committees exist every place throughout the state. They meet at least 4 times a year. And the whole purpose of these committees is to bring together emergency management directors, first responders, and all of the organizations in that region that are related to emergency management to discuss what are the plans, trainings, and exercises that we need to do in order to better prepare our region for an emergency. The regional coordinators do go to every single one of these meetings, and so they can talk to you about the resources that exist to meet your needs. You can also come up with a regional training, planning, and exercise plan for the next 3 years to say what are the things that we as a region want to do that Vermont Emergency Management can bring in the people to actually deliver this. And you can also talk about what's say the equipment that we need, and your regional coordinator can help you find the grants that exist that your regional emergency management committee can apply for. And then also on this page is information about our Certified Emergency Management Director program. So if you are interested in becoming a certified EMD, it walks you through that. One thing to note is that we did, as of January 1st, have some changes to that program. Most of it was just changing the hours associated with each training because FEMA made some updates there. But one thing that is a big change is that we said that you can take the Homeland Security Exercise and Evaluation Program course instead of having to participate in an exercise in order to achieve EMD certification. So if that exercise component was something that was holding you back in the past, I'd encourage you to go check out the program now to see if there's anything that, if it's something that you're interested in now. So before I turn it over to recovery, I will take a pause. I know I talk pretty fast, so my apologies on that. If anyone has any questions, please raise your hand or enter a question into the chat. Okay, seeing none. If anyone has a question and can't do that, if you want to unmute your microphone. Okay, seeing none, then I will turn it over to Ben Rose, our Recovery and Mitigation Section Chief, who will talk to you about the Public Assistance Grant Program. Go ahead, Ben.
Thank you, Emily. Hello, everybody. Whew. So many words. I'm aware that the audience today consists of 30 plus people, some of whom have heard all of this many times before, and a few for whom it's all new, and there's a lot. And so I'm going to focus mostly towards those who are hearing this for the first time. And welcome to them, to the wonderful world of FEMA. So recovery and mitigation are 2 of the phases of emergency management. Preparedness is great, response is necessary. Recovery is the long tail, and mitigation is really the only phase of emergency management where we can break the cycle of disaster and make ourselves less vulnerable the next time around. And We've actually, in Vermont, done a pretty good job of that. A lot of the infrastructure that we built during the recovery from Tropical Storm Irene has withstood storms that were larger in number of inches of precipitation in those particular places than Irene itself. So we are better prepared for the next Irene. And of course, the next thing that happens won't be Irene, it'll be something different. And so I'm going to talk about the public assistance program, and then I'm going to turn it over to Hazard Mitigation Planner Carolyn Paske to talk about the hazard mitigation assistance programs that are available, both federal and now at the state level, thanks to the Flood Resilient Community Fund. But public assistance is FEMA's big program. And Vermont has received over $800 million of federal public assistance funding since 2011. 200 million plus was federal 90% share of recovery dollars for Tropical Storm Irene. We've had about 15 federally declared disasters since then, which added up to over $80 million federal share, which is usually at 75%. And in the last few years, since COVID, FEMA has been paying out at 90% for federally declared disasters. And then the balance of the $800+ million, over $500 million of it has been federal public assistance related to the emergency response to COVID-19. So that is the big $506 million and counting elephant. Emily, beep. Okay, so when does a federal disaster occur? It occurs when something big and bad enough happens that the governor of a state or the chief executive of a tribe asks the President of the United States for assistance under the Stafford Act, essentially asserting that a disaster exceeds the capacity of the local and state resources available. And so that threshold changes as inflation happens. Right now, the base threshold for a federal disaster to be requested is $1.77 per capita, which equates to just over $1 million statewide. But in order for a county to be eligible for public assistance, there needs to be a more concentrated impact of $4.44 per capita based on the most recent census population in that county. And so for Vermont, Essex County only needs $20 some odd thousand for something to be considered as a federally declared disaster for that county. Chittenden County needs close to $800,000 of damage. And statewide, the qualifying counties need to add up to over $1 million plus $50,000. Then, beep, that gets us into the long and winding snake of the federal public assistance process. So in the upper left of the screen, let's start the snake with boom, something bad happened, like Winter Storm Elliott, or as the National Weather Service calls it, the severe winter storm of December 23rd through 24th, 2022. Vermont Emergency Management, as you've heard, activates the regional planning commissions to collect data from local EMDs through local liaison reporting. We then are required under the Stafford Act to internally validate that we believe we've hit the disaster thresholds before we ask FEMA to get involved. And so we rely heavily on the Vermont Agency of Transportation because they're the people who know about how much it costs to fix a road or fix a culvert, and they use their internal processes to essentially quantify the damages. We cross-check the local liaison reporting with what we're hearing through VTrans to deconflict the information. So, for example, we'll hear about $100,000 road washout through the local liaison reporting, and the VTrans district tech will say, well, actually, it's only $80,000. And so we'll use that $80,000 in putting together a preliminary damage assessment, or PDA, which we then use as the basis for a request to FEMA. We say, FEMA, we have done our internal or initial preliminary damage assessment. We are requesting that you join us for a joint PDA. And so the joint preliminary damage assessment is what's happening right now for the December 23rd storm. And once we have a matrix of damages for that event, which has been validated by FEMA, we use that as the basis for a declaration request, which we put together for the governor. The governor submits to the president, and the president says yes or no. And obviously FEMA has a lot of input into that decision. But eventually what comes out is a disaster declaration. Can you go back one slide, please, Emily? Thank you. And so once we get that declaration, then we're really at the beginning of the process for communities to get disaster recovery assistance. And within a week of getting a declaration, we schedule applicant briefings, and off we go into the PA process. Beep. Okay, we get the declaration, we hold applicant briefings, and nowadays we can probably do that virtually. We can do one briefing, we can record it, we don't make people drive all over, we don't have to do 4 briefings so that we can do one within an hour's drive of everybody. Each community or eligible organization that wishes to participate in public assistance submits a request for public assistance. It's an online form now. And that gets them into the process of working with FEMA on an exploratory call, a recovery scoping meeting. These are all virtual now. FEMA formulates projects. FEMA has something called the Grants Portal, which is an online way for communities to submit their damage information and for FEMA to formulate the project, for the community to sign off on it. The state gets to sign off on it. We sometimes catch problems before they get written into a grant in the state review queue. The FEMA funding gets quote unquote obligated, which means it becomes available to the state of Vermont Department of Public Safety as the grantee organization. We issue subgrants to each eligible community. So DPS, we are the grantee, and you, your town, are a subgrantee, and you have to sign a subgrant agreement with the state of Vermont, which has many terms and conditions, as with any federal grant passed through by the state. And then eventually you get the money back. Beep. And actually, before I get into the conditions for eligibility, let me say that ordinarily, under the Stafford Act, public assistance is 75% federal cost share of eligible damages. For very large events like Irene, the president has the discretion to make it 90%. For extreme events or national events like Katrina or COVID, the president has the discretion to make it 100% federal cost share. COVID was 100% federal cost share until July 1st, and now it's 90% federal cost share. All disasters declared during the last few years were also at 90% federal cost share, which helped Vermont a lot because of the Halloween storm of November 2019, which was federally declared in January, 19. It was federally declared in January 2020, just a few months before the COVID event, and it was declared, because it was declared in early 2020, it was at 90% cost share. That Halloween storm, by the way, was the largest disaster event we had between Irene and COVID. So communities are just now seeing their final payouts on damage repairs from that Halloween 2019 storm at 90% federal share. So I'm now going to give you a very condensed version of what you would hear in an applicant briefing when it's in the nick of too late. But basically, in order for FEMA to pay for, let's say, the repair of a road that was washed out in a flood or the flooding of a municipal building, these 4 layers of eligibility have to all work. The applicant has to be an eligible applicant, and the most frequently asked question is, will FEMA pay for my driveway? No. The driveway is residential damage, and FEMA public assistance only covers public infrastructure. Private residential infrastructure is only covered under individual assistance, which is a different program, and it only really comes into play when we have a much larger event. The last time we had one in Vermont was Irene in 2011. So ordinarily, we're talking here to municipal officials and some qualifying nonprofits like public utility companies. So, are you an eligible applicant? If you're a town, yes. If you're a village, yes. If you're a city, yes. If you are an essential institution like a hospital, yes. Is the facility that was damaged your responsibility? Is it something that you take care of in due course? After Irene, some communities said certain roads and trails were washed out, and FEMA said, yes, but you hadn't done anything or taken care of that piece of infrastructure in several decades. And FEMA essentially will not pay for you to rehabilitate something that was in disrepair before the event. That sounds obvious, except FEMA can also say, gee, you're asking us to repair a culvert, demonstrate to us that you had been maintaining that culvert, demonstrate to us that there was some record of maintenance and inspection prior to the event. In other words, FEMA is saying, if we're going to spend federal dollars to repair this culvert, show us that the damage occurred during this event and not during 30 years of neglect. And so communities sometimes have to explain to FEMA, this is the schedule on which we inspect all our culverts, something like that. Okay, so let's assume that it is a facility that you take care of and are responsible for. Is the work that you did on it eligible? And that's what the FEMA rules are all about. The work that you do is not just repairing it to the pre-existing condition. That's the baseline. But under the Stafford Act, there's also something called Section 406 hazard mitigation, which is project specific, and it's a wonderful opportunity to repair the thing to a more resilient condition than what was there before. In Vermont, we do one better than that because we have the state general stream alteration permit. And so, for example, when a culvert washes out, whether there's federal funding or not, under the general stream alteration permit, it is required that the community repair that culvert so that it can meet the bank full width hydraulic requirements of that stream. And so we build a better culvert, which won't blow out again during the next storm of the same size. So that's not hazard mitigation. That's just repairing to the existing codes and standards that are in place. But let's say that you say, gee, if we built headers and footers on this culvert, it would do even better during a similar event. FEMA, at its discretion, can cover that additional cost as well to put the thing back better than it was before. So, anytime you have a federal public assistance disaster, the first question you should ask when you talk to FEMA people is, are there 406 hazard mitigation opportunities? Because as soon as you say those magic words of 406 hazard mitigation opportunities, the FEMA people are on notice that your community expects the best service that they can provide under the Stafford Act to put things back better than they were. And then last but not least, it seems obvious, but this is the one where people get caught, is the cost eligible? In order for the cost to be eligible, you have to comply with all the federal procurement requirements surrounding using federal dollars. It has to be competitively procured. It has to be cost reasonable. You have to make sure that you have in the procurement process provided ample opportunities, not just for the three contractors who run around town all the time, but for small businesses, minority and women-owned businesses to compete fairly for federal procurement opportunities. So there are rules around that. There are guidance documents that DPS can provide, and all of those rules are also rules that pertain to the state as the grantee, as well as to you, the community, as the subrecipient. And therefore, a lot of that gets baked into your subgrant agreement. So a lot of ways to screw up in the FEMA PA process, but most of it boils down to common sense, ensuring good competitive procurement for your community, and following your local procurement standards. For anything under $250,000, which is most repairs that are done in Vermont, it suffices to follow your local procurement standards with a bit of an overlay of doing ample public announcement of your procurement opportunities to ensure the 2 CFA requirements around small minority and women-owned businesses are met. So sorry, that's dense. There's a 4-hour seminar about federal procurement, and you just heard the best of it. Beep. Then there's ERAF, Emergency Relief and Assistance Fund. This is a Vermont program. It is somewhat unusual among states because there's a whole spectrum of how states deal with the non-federal cost share on disasters. In some states, the state covers the entire non-federal share. In some states, our neighbor New Hampshire, for example, the state covers none of the non-federal share. In Vermont, we're somewhere in the middle, and we actually use it as a carrot and stick opportunity and try to incentivize our communities to do the things that they can do in advance to lower the long-term public cost of disaster. And so if a community does only the bare minimum, it still gets 30% of the non-federal share from the state. And to put that another way, if you have a $10,000 road blowout in a 75% federal share disaster, the state will cover $750, which is 7.5%, which is 30% of the 25% non-federal share. So in that scenario, the state is on board for 30% of the non-federal share. If you meet 4 criteria of ERAF, your community gets a 50-50 split of the non-federal share with the state, where the state would cover $1,250 of that imaginary $10,000, 12.5% being 50% of the federal, non-federal 25% share. Whew. So what are those 4 criteria? Well, you have to have an up-to-date local emergency management plan. You have to have an up-to-date local hazard mitigation plan. You have to participate in the National Flood Insurance Program, which 90% of Vermont municipalities do. And you have to have up-to-date local transportation codes and standards. And that's there's also 90% of Vermont communities have up-to-date local transportation codes and standards. Those are pretty important, not just when FEMA is in town, but whenever you're repairing roads. I mean, obviously, your road crew needs to know what the standards are for repairing roads and ditches in your community. And so the standard you set, whether FEMA is in town or not, is the standard to which FEMA will pay for upgrades when they are in town. So those are 4 things that a community has to do to get a 50-50 split of the non-federal share with the state. And then under ERAF, the carrot is that if you do all 4 of those things plus a 5th thing, you get a 70% share from the state as part of your subgrant payout. So that would be 17.5% for a 75% federal share disaster, which means the local property taxpayers in that scenario are only on the hook for 7.5% of the infrastructure repair cost. What is that fifth thing, you may ask? That fifth thing is to have local river corridor standards in place to essentially reduce your future development in flood-prone areas. So, and that's something that's administered by the Agency of Natural Resources. I won't try to speak to it here, but ANR has local floodplain managers, regional floodplain managers, and can provide great technical assistance if your community has the political will and wherewithal to adopt river corridor bylaws. And again, ultimately, if you're in a hole, stop digging. Vermont communities are flood prone because of where they were built along rivers. The first thing to do is to stop digging by controlling the land use in your river corridors. And the state incentivizes that through ERAF. Enough about ERAF. Beep. FEMA Public Assistance has some really interesting features which can really help communities to become more resilient. There's something called an improved project. What is that? That is when you're doing something that's FEMA eligible and you actually want to do more at the same time. You know, the time to do certain repairs is when you're also doing other certain repairs. And so, for example, when a bridge has washed out, there's never going to be a better moment in time for a community to add width to make that bridge safer for pedestrians and cyclists. And so you may say to FEMA, we don't want to put back the bridge that was there, or even the bridge that would meet the minimum standards for general stream alteration permit hydraulic capacity. We want to add a bike lane. And FEMA says, well, that's an improved project. And what they mean is you can do it. We will pay for the bridge that is FEMA eligible, and you just have to keep track in a separate column of the additional incremental cost of building it that one lane bigger. To take a more absurd but clear example, a community could say, we want to paint the bridge purple. And FEMA will say, well, great, we just keep track of the purple paint because we're not going to pay for that. But an improved project is doing the FEMA project plus doing something else that FEMA is not paying for at the same time. Then there's an alternate project. A community can also say, gosh, that bridge really only goes up to one house at the end of a road, and we think that it's in the long-term public interest not to repair that road and make that a town trail. And rather than spending $500,000 on a road to not one house, 0 houses, let's say, or you realize there's another way to access that house up in the woods and we don't need this piece of road anymore. The town can decide to take the money that would have been used to repair that piece of infrastructure and do something else. After Tropical Storm Irene, there was a community that had its tennis courts flooded out, and it was realized that basically nobody was using those tennis courts, and the money that it would have taken to repair those tennis courts could be used to apply sidewalks in the downtown that would be used by many residents. That was a successful example of an alternate project. The state of Vermont used the alternate project opportunity to rebuild the Waterbury State Office Complex to its current configuration, rather than rebuilding the laundry building, which was in the floodplain, and all the other little outbuildings that were in the floodplain of the Winooski River in Waterbury. And so disaster is an opportunity to put it back better. Beep. I'm at the end. And so I've taken time, knowing that we were a little bit ahead of schedule, to give you a little bit about public assistance. For every dollar of public assistance under the Stafford Act, 15 cents becomes available to the state of Vermont to make hazard mitigation grant program, or HMGP grants, that can be awarded anywhere in the state for any hazard that in any community. And so there's HMGP funding available for each federally declared disaster as well. And there are annual rounds of funding, notably BRIC, or Building Resilient Infrastructure in Communities. That's an annual grant funding cycle that we apply for, which Caroline is going to talk about. And then last but not least, there's the Flood Resilient Community Fund, which is a program that the state is doing with some of the federal ARPA money, which is state administered. And so hazard mitigation is where you get to make it better even before a disaster. Take it away, Caroline.
Well, it's a lovely segue, but I do want to pause for a minute. Oh, Ben, could you mute? I'm getting a lot of feedback. Oh, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Ben on recovery before we move into the exciting realm of hazard mitigation? Not to say recovery is not exciting, because it is, but any questions, please type them into the chat or raise your hand or unmute yourself and ask your question. Okay, thank you for allowing me to take that pause there. And now we will turn it over to Caroline to talk about the exciting world of hazard mitigation. Go ahead, Caroline.
Great, thank you. So I'm Caroline Paske. I'm State Hazard Mitigation Planner, standing in for Stephanie Smith, your State Hazard Mitigation Officer. And I'm going to be talking about hazard mitigation. So what is hazard mitigation? It's reducing or avoiding the impacts of hazards, which can ideally eliminate the need for emergency responders to respond and makes their jobs more manageable. So how can we reduce those hazards or the impacts of hazards? Next slide. Oh, yes, this slide. In Vermont, our vision is for a more resilient Vermont. We are facing climate change and natural disasters, and our most significant hazards of flooding, fluvial erosion, ice jams are all impacted by climate change, as you've heard about today. Next slide. So our first step in mitigation, hazard mitigation, is the planning process. Next slide. So here's a map that's provided by FEMA on a monthly basis. This one's actually from December. Right now, we have 64% of communities in Vermont that have a current and adopted plan. There's approximately another 25% that have plans that are expired. So to note, communities without an up-to-date plan are not eligible for hazard mitigation grants, and that higher percentage of state assistance through the ERAF program, which Ben touched on. We'll dive more into these different types of funding sources. They are through BRIC, through hazard mitigation grant program after disasters, and through the Flood Resilient Communities Fund. Next. All right, so what are mitigation projects? What are you looking for funding for? Next. So mitigation can be a buyout. This house right here was destroyed during Hurricane Irene, and we were able to buy out this property for the value of the property the day before the storm. So not what it's worth as a destroyed building, but what it was worth beforehand. And we could make the homeowner almost whole again. So this is a really great situation where we can do buyouts before or after a disaster, ideally before, so that you can be safer during disaster events. Next slide. Here you see a bridge that was replaced. There was a flood study that was completed that showed that the waterway was constricted at the spot because there had been substantial buildup of land to construct this bridge. So by opening up the land underneath the bridge, making the span wider, the river was no longer constricted here, which was previously backing the river up and causing flooding issues. So bridge replacements, upsizing, floodplain restoration, all types of projects. Next, thank you. A really great project is the Melrose Terrace in Brattleboro. There were several housing blocks that were removed, and then the site was turned into a park. And it was actually a great success story I heard during our December flood event. You saw floodwaters going through the site that previously had people's homes for some of our most vulnerable populations because they were senior housing. So really great success story in demolition of flood vulnerable buildings and floodplain restoration. Next, please. Our next type of project is dam removal or restoration. Here you see the Cross Brothers Dam in Northfield. This project has been submitted for funding. It is an old dam, partially already destroyed, but it's enough for it to back the water up behind it and cause flooding issues in Northfield. By removing this dam, we can restore fish passage, restore the natural flow of water, and there's multiple benefits to it. So this is a different type of project that we could fund. Next, please. Next, we have flood proofing. So this is keeping the water out. Here you see the library in Lincoln, Vermont. They've retrofitted this building that was valuable to the community where it was by putting up barriers on the windows and the doors that will keep floodwaters out of the building. So that's flood proofing. Next, please. Other project ideas, we have culvert upsizing. I think that every single town, city, and village in Vermont could use some culvert upsizing. So definitely get those projects in. We have road relocations, which is maybe a little bit more complicated, structural elevation, of course, my favorite, local hazard mitigation planning, other planning activities. So what does your community need to do to get to the next step of hazard mitigation? Do you need to build partnerships? Do you need to understand what the hazards are better? Do you need to understand what the flood situation is? Do we need a flood study, which will look at changing different dynamics in your community and how that will impact flooding? It's a really, really great, useful tool. And riparian planting. So that nature-based infrastructure, rain gardens, that sort of things, all eligible for funding. So next slide, please. All right, so we will dive into the details of those mitigation funding sources. Next. First, we have the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, and this is available after a declared disaster. We get 15% of the public assistance allocation, which Ben had talked about before my presentation. The best use for projects like buyouts, culverts, bridges, floodplain restoration, dam removal, and you do need to meet a benefit cost analysis, which I'll talk about a little bit more. There's also the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities Program. This is BRIC, and this happens every year. So it's a funding source you can really depend on. We typically have our funding rounds in December. This is December 2023. The next one will be December 2024. We're about to submit the application tomorrow for this round. So hopefully if you have a project idea, you got that in. If not, definitely still contact us. We'll see what we can work out for the next funding round. This is a little bit more flexible of a funding source than HMGP, where you can really get in those more planning project scoping projects. And this is where we really want to fund the local hazard mitigation plan updates and new plans for every single municipality. So again, contact us if you're interested. We'll contact us any time of year. It doesn't matter. We'll get your information and develop your project. Next slide, please. All right, so some other considerations. So for any FEMA funded projects, typically there's going to be a 75% federal cost share and then a 25% local match. There are some exceptions for communities that are considered economically disadvantaged rural communities. If you want to look up the definition for that, it's under the Stafford Act as disadvantaged low-income communities. I've already forgotten the phrase that's been phased out. So we have determined which communities are considered economically disadvantaged rural communities. You can either contact us or your regional planning commissions might be able to help you with that as well, get you in touch with us. And by being an economically disadvantaged rural community, there's a 90% federal cost share. So that really helps a lot of those smaller communities qualify. Funding is available to municipalities and state agencies. So there's some eligibility for quasi-governmental organizations, and typically there will be a benefit cost analysis required. So it has to have more of a cost benefit than it'll cost to construct the project, of course. Next, please. All right, so the Flood Resilient Communities Fund. This is a state program. It was funded under ARPA. Eligible project types are flood vulnerable structure and buyout projects, similar to the FEMA funding, vacant at-risk parcel buyout or conservation, natural resource projects to improve floodplain access and function, project scoping, planning, education, and outreach initiatives. So very similar to other funding sources, but with a fewer hoops because it's state funding and not federal funding. So some of the projects that we've had under this program, next, there was a landslide buyout. This is an at-risk property that we were able to move quickly on and get these people into a better situation. Applications are accepted on a rolling basis, so definitely contact if you have project ideas. The funding needs to be spent by December 31st, 2026. So get in contact with our state hazard mitigation officer if you have any project ideas for the Flood Resilient Communities Fund. Next. Here's our contact information. I do apologize, it's my old last name. I was just seeing this. You can get in contact with me, Caroline Paske, at caroline.paske@vermont.gov. It is updated on the website. Or Stephanie Smith, your state hazard mitigation officer. Her name has not changed, Stephanie A. Smith at vermont.gov. If you have any interest in planning our construction projects or scoping projects, we're definitely here to help. Thank you, Emily. All right, and that is it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Caroline. So if anyone has any questions, please enter them into the chat or raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, if anyone has any questions for Caroline for hazard mitigation, please unmute your microphone and ask them now. Okay, well, thank you so much, Caroline. I appreciate it. And so for everyone else, thank you. Thank you to the 34 folks that joined us online today. Thank you to our presenters. On your screen right now, you will see their email addresses. You can feel free to reach out directly to the presenters today to ask any questions that maybe you felt uncomfortable asking online or you didn't think to ask. But another opportunity for you is that if you think of a question or if you just want to meet the people that are actually serving your region, please join us for the Spring Flood Regional Q&A sessions. This is a new thing this year that we haven't offered in the past. It is your opportunity to, after viewing all of these presentations, to just ask questions of people. So if you know of folks who couldn't make today's session, please feel free to forward them the videos. They're going to be coming out tomorrow to that training listserv, and then come and join us. So the Northeast session is going to be held on February 7th from noon to 1 p.m., and that's for the folks that are in Washington, Lamoille, Orleans, Essex, and Caledonia counties. So we'll be joined by the agencies you saw today, but the individuals that serve that particular region. So Shauna will actually still be joining us, I think, from AOT maybe, but other folks in that region from AOT will also be present. If you're in the South, that's Bennington, Windham, Windsor, Orange, and Rutland counties, please join us on February 8th from noon to 1 p.m. And if you're in the Northwest, that's Franklin, Grand Isle, Chittenden, and Addison counties, please join us on February 9th from noon to 1 p.m. At these sessions, not only will you get to meet the folks that serve these agencies in your region, but you'll also receive an update from the National Weather Service on their spring flood outlook and ice jams, because as they said, they update that on a bi-weekly basis. So you'll be seeing that, that update during that meeting. And again, they'll be focused on your region. So please do call into that, and please come prepared with all of your questions, having viewed these presentations. Come up with any questions that you have for those agencies. And so concludes today's Spring Flood seminar. This again is our annual seminar, so thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to leave these presenters' names up on the screen in case you have any questions, but that'll do it for us. So if there's any lingering questions, now's the time to put them in the chat or raise your hand or unmute your microphone. Last call. Okay, well then you get back the gift of half an hour. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you joining us. And again, please share the videos that are going to be coming out tomorrow. If you haven't registered for a training listserv, take that opportunity to do that now so that you can receive those training videos. Thanks so much.